And so I had a very supernatural moment. I'm 22 years old, and I meet a guy, and as we shake hands, God gave him what's called a word of wisdom. Now, that's a biblical term, but what it means, and we see this in the life of Jesus. Jesus is in Samaria. He's sitting next to a well. This woman comes out, and Jesus says, give me a water. And, she's like, hey, Samaritans don't talk to Jews, and Jews don't talk to Samaritans. What's up with you? And he goes, if you knew who you were talking to, you would ask him, and he'd give you living water. And he says, go call your husband. She said, I'm not married. He goes, you're right, you're not married, because you've been married 5 times, and now you're living with a guy. And she's like,
how do you know that?
Like, how did Jesus know that? Well, that's called a word of knowledge. So supernatural information put in the mind of Jesus by God in the moment. So I had this experience. I shake hands with this guy. His name is Chris. And in that moment, God told him when Bo was a child, he was sexually abused a long time. And so he didn't say anything at the moment. God gave him some wisdom of how to use it. So the next night we're in this Bible study, and there's only about 7 or 8 people. And he's talking about taking off the mask, being transparent. Of course, these are all things when you've had shame and trauma. I'm not letting anybody in. There's lots of locks on that
We
door.
pretend to be vulnerable and talk with.
And then he goes, now suppose, and I'm over here kind of on the side. No one's really looking at me. And he goes, now suppose when Bo was a child growing up, and he begins to describe my life.
Oh, my.
And no one, I'm like white knuckling. I mean, like, my eyes were big. I'm like, if anyone looks at me. And no one looked, thank God. But about 2 hours later, privately, I said, Chris, how did you know? And then he explained how God gave him the word of knowledge, and then God gave him wisdom of how to apply it, because he knew it would open me up. He said, tomorrow I want you to tell your good friends about your childhood. I mean, this is a thing like never. So
Is that gonna happen?
I told Joe, I told Brent, I told Jeff, I told Richard. And I discovered that they loved me, and probably loved me more, for being vulnerable. And one of them told me his story. So he had been living in secret. He had had his own, abuse as a child. And so he opened up. So from that moment, it was like, wow, I can take the mask off and still be loved. Because that's one of the real lies, Jimmy. We think that if we let people see us, they won't love us anymore.
There's kind of a shade of shame, very, very in the root of the pain.
Oh,
trauma,
deep
the shame. That thing doesn't let you go away, go free. We are afraid to share this secret. Nobody's gonna see me again as a good friend or a good fella, because if somebody actually knew what I've been through, even what happens to me or what I did.
Right.
And I think the necessity to be vulnerable and I mean bold enough to share. I think this is the very, I don't want to say cornerstone of the healing, but it's a very good step.
Well,
First step.
It's a foundation stone for sure. So faith was a big part, and that was your real question. So faith was a big part of this. Like when Chris told me, tell your friends, I needed internal strength. So I prayed, and I heard God say, step out in faith. So I did. But Jimmy, we all want to be loved. We all want to be accepted, and we all want to belong to a group, belong to a community. So what do we do when we have deep shame? I put on a mask of an image I think is acceptable and lovable. And I portray that. And then you love Bo, but what you really love isn't me. You love the image I have projected.
The character that you made up.
Yeah. So what happens when the mask gets pulled off and the real Bo looks quite different than what you've been projecting? So I pulled the mask off, and I discovered it was unbelievably how free that was to be like, I can be loved and belong and accepted as I am with all of, all my problems. So that began me on a journey. I did something that was probably very dangerous. 1997, 18 years after that, I actually confronted the man that abused me the majority of the time. And that had been the deepest wound. Now, I would not recommend anybody do this unless you have a good team around you of supporting you, because when you go and confront the person, you can end up with a bigger, deeper wound. Mm-hmm. Because if they get mad because now they're ashamed, they can then go on the attack, and they can attack you, and then they can start talking about you, and they flip the table. Mm. This is not recommended to do, but I wrote a letter, and he lived, an hour away. So I wrote him a letter. This is 1990, before we had text and email and everything. Dinosaurs were walking around here. Everything was black and white. And I'm like, hey, I just want to meet. I just want to talk. And, I want to clear the air. So we agreed to meet. We went to a mall. We actually just sat in the car out in the parking lot so that no one was around. I just said to him, this happened, and I'm choosing to forgive you. He didn't ask me for forgiveness. Mm. I just said, I'm choosing to forgive you. And forgiveness, I know, is one of the topics you'd like to get into here. But choosing to forgive is an act of the will. A lot of people don't forgive because they're trying to forgive out of their emotions. And emotions come second. Mm. You have to choose to forgive. And forgiveness is, it's a difficult thing. You need someone walking with you and coaching you when you're forgiving a traumatic type event. Anyway, it worked out really well. And I just said, I'm choosing to forgive you. And he was kind of sheepish. He wasn't really,
understand what really happened.
Oh, he knew what had happened, but he wasn't like, oh, Bo, I did wrong. He wasn't apologizing, and, just a little bit. He wanted to escape the moment. Something happened that day. It was wonderful. I had, from the age 9 until that day, I was 35. I had chewed my fingernails. It was a habit I had because I was a nervous little boy. And about 2 weeks after that, I'm like, I need to trim my fingernails. I had never needed to trim my fingernails. And I had realized that my habit of chewing my fingernails was connected to that. And it was just a little outward sign, some habit. I just naturally stopped. I didn't think about it, just stopped. And today I was looking at my fingernails like, yeah. So that was 1990. So what was that? 35 years, guys. Long time. I've doubled my age since that time. I know everybody's out there thinking, how could he be 70? He looks like 53.
Come on, yes.
I got the heart of that, but not necessarily the body.
It's a spring chicken here.
Yeah. I'm no longer a spring chicken.
Oh man, but maybe some people would say, how do you forgive when the person actually doesn't deserve the forgiveness? How do you?
Well, it's a great question. And what you have to understand is, first, being forgiven by God. Like if you don't have a relationship with God, or if your relationship with God is shallow or a performance-based relationship, meaning I'm acceptable if I perform well and obey well, but when I don't, God no longer accepts me. Mm-hmm. The deeper you have an understanding between you and God, the easier it is to forgive someone else, because you recognize you don't deserve forgiveness. Mm. So the man I forgave did not deserve forgiveness. He never came to me, never apologized. Even when I confronted him, he was just moderate in saying, I'm sorry. So first I realized God has been merciful to me. But this is where I go back to the choice of the will. I'm choosing to forgive you. And so what happens is when you are angry and haven't forgiven someone, it's like having handcuffs. It's like being handcuffed to the other person in your memories and in your emotion. And when I forgave him, it was like I took the handcuff off me. It may still have been dangling from him, but for me, it was off. This was only a part of the process. I still had to go through a lot of healing of shame. I know you asked about, and we can go back talk more about forgiveness, but I know you asked, can a person be healed? And I think yes, you can be healed. Like I have been healed of my shame. I talk about it a lot. A public speaker, a conference speaker, especially down here in South America and Africa, sometimes in the United States. And I talk about this a lot, Jimmy, it liberates so many people when they hear me talk about my story and the healing and the forgiveness when I've been able to forgive others. I mean, it just brings so much healing to them. I will say this. There's always, when you get cut and the cut is fully healed and the shrapnel or the pellet or the bullet is removed from you, you can heal up completely, but you often will have a scar.
Right.
So I know that I have scars. What does a scar look like? Well, the scar, I no longer emotionally react and respond to the trauma, but I have memories of them. Like I have a very sharp memory. I can go back in my childhood and remember with great detail. And sometimes I wish that I could just push a button. So one day when I'm raised from the dead with Jesus, he's going to push that button and all of that stuff will get empty. The trash can will get
The
empty.
reset button.
The reset button. I'm looking forward to that. Not rushing it, but so all of that to say you can be healed, but you may have scars and it's okay.
Yeah.
Your scar actually can become a great story. Like, hey, Jimmy, tell me, you got this scar on your face. What happened? It's the way I am. Someone like, they see the scar. There's no pain remaining in it. And for me, it becomes a story, a tool in the hands of God to bring healing to others. And so this is the stuff I talk about day and night, write about. I mean, this is right up my alley,
Once I read one of the most important thing that we can actually do is understand the pain, the trauma, and
Yes.
also give it some kind of a meaning. And when you use that kind of stuff to help others, is when the healing process starts. At least happens to me when I tell my story with other men and try to help them. Kind of, okay, I know I have some scars, but the worst position you can ever be is when you don't know that you have them.
Right, exactly.
It's a dangerous place, the dangerous zone.
That's sort of the denial issue.
The denial structure.
Because but you are not aware, or you don't want to be aware of that.
You know what? Sometimes I think that the awarenesses start when you push it a little bit, because your brain starts to. Sometimes the denial structure is so well built that honestly, I didn't know. I honestly thought that I was good.
Right.
I was good, honest. But when I push myself to think and start to write about my life, about my childhood, and I think both have a very good memory, not just because they have it, because you do the work.
Yeah.
You go back, of course, with God, with the Holy Spirit guiding you. But it's not just lacking. I mean,
right.
I know that you've been a lot, but you did the work. You actually go back in memories and stuff. Of course, there's something that you can remember, but honestly, there was time when I couldn't even put the odds together. I didn't realize why am I reacting like that? Why, when people do this, why I get so angry? Why I need to defend myself? I didn't know that, because when I was a kid, I made a vow. I said, I will never be in that position when I cannot defend myself.
Yeah. So
I need to be in control.
we call that a vow of the heart. Promise of the heart is what vow means.
Exactly.
Well, you said something really important. You talked about naming it. So a lot of times A lot of times when we have this trauma and we have shame connected, because it's almost always there, we don't want to even see it. And so some people are workaholics because it silences their thoughts and memories. Like if I'm so busy and I'm working and there's demands, and the worst part is when you
even in church,
but in your job, like you can become a successful person, man or woman, and you're working really hard, and now not only are you silencing the shame and never getting to the root, but you're making money and you're making a name for yourself. Oh, Lucio, he's this really successful guy. Like, he's got a boat and 2 cars and a nice house and
oh really?
And
I don't know that, Lucio.
Yeah, you don't know. It's another one. And now he's beginning to feel good about himself. So not only is he avoiding, he's not aware of it. He doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to know what it's there. And it's the fuel that drives him to be successful. Now it's compounded, because if we begin to go into that hard issue, you threaten the engine because he has a drive. It's an unhealthy drive. So it works well in business, but you bring that same drive at home, and you're driving the wife and your kids, and the kids are like reacting because dad's not, it's like
emotionally
connected.
Then
when the kids get 16, 18, they go into drugs. The girls are connected to dad. So, they find a boy, and we all know what the boy wants. And they give themselves to the boy thinking they're going to get the love and affection and attention that dad never gave me. And you can trace all that back. Jimmy, I've done this with dozens and dozens of guys, help them walk through that. And so a lot of times we will react. Workaholism, perfectionism, we want to be perfect. And that's a part because we're trying to create an image. And we're afraid of being seen for who we are. So therefore we work harder. So for me, it's fun stuff to talk about this.
Yeah, me too. When I finally understand the ways that it was a coping mechanism for me.
It's exactly.
It's like, okay, I need to deal with this stuff that I don't want to. In fact, I don't even know or fully understand what happens to me, but I need to do good. I need to perform well. I need to hear that, oh, Jimmy, well done. You're great. That's it. And of course, there's a drive, unhealthy drive, right?
It's an unhealthy drive.
But I think most of the time is the way that men learn how to deal with pain, with trauma. And before we just ended up, I want to say something in Spanish, though.
Yeah.
Porque yo estoy convencido que muchas de las personas a nuestro alrededor no son conscientes de con qué están lidiando, ¿no? Y yo creo que es súper importante ahora, ¿no? Si es que alguien puede empezar a reconocer ciertos patrones, ¿no? Ciertos patrones de conducta de, oye, ¿por qué me inclino hacia esto? ¿Por qué no puedo disfrutar de repente de alguna fiesta o algún trago? Porque tengo que embriagarme. Necesito alcohol para divertirme. Incluso lo puedes hacer con buenas cosas.
Claro. Por ejemplo, para seguir en la línea que estás, ¿no? ¿Por qué me es más fácil dar mi vida en el trabajo? Y cuando llego y mis hijos me piden jugar o que les lea, me cuesta horrores y quiero huir de ese momento, ¿no?
Claro, es que afuera te dan validación, eso, pero tu hijo no te va a decir bien, papá, no, es pura convicción.
Claro.
Mira, creo que hemos tenido una buena conversación. Thank you one more time, Bo. Honestly, always talk to you is a pleasure. All the wisdom, and all the things that God puts in you and your faith. And honestly, you are one of the, and I told you before, uh, you are such a great guy, such a, like a husband, father. And I mean, I know you're not perfect. I know that.
Well, yeah, I think
my wife knows it too.
you might have a different opinion about
Yeah, she's like, oh, you should see him at home.
Yes, yes.
But the thing is that we need to, in the good way, to call man to man up.
Yes.
Man up is not pretend that we have everything under control. We have figured out everything. No, man up is recognize. Oh, I have this, and I need to deal it.
Right.
In the manly way.
Right.
We need to be bold enough and humble enough to say, okay, honey, I'm sorry. I need to deal with this.
Right.
I need to deal with, I don't know, money issues or, relationship issues. But I need to deal with those kind of things in the good way, in a healthy way.
Yes.
And I think that the only way that guarantees a successful end is when we choose the Jesus way. Because the world is gonna tell us, oh no, you need to deal with this with money. You need to deal with this with pleasure.
Right.
Oh, you only need a new car. Oh, you need a new girlfriend.
Those are called mood altering activities or substances: alcohol, drugs, sex.
Yeah, those are functional idols.
Let me just add, one thing, for the listeners. The fruit of the hard work that I put in is seen in several things. First of all, I talked about the horrific relationship with my dad. I want the listeners to know that I worked for 24 years. It was 24 years from the day I became a Christian until my dad passed away. And I worked hard to restore that relationship. And that relationship was fully restored in the last 6 years. We got to sort of a neutral. And then the last year, a full restoration between me and him. So that's the fruit of hard work. And then secondly, my wife came from quite different but extremely dysfunctional family. So my mom was alcoholic, so I had extreme dysfunction. You put the two of us together.
Yeah, that's.
We had 4 kids in 5 years. I mean, it was like a tornado hit us, But I've been married 43 years. I have 4 children, 8 ranging from 42, 40, 38, and 37. I have strong, vibrant, healthy relationships with them. There are not broken issues between me and them, and they all have their own healthy families. So I throw that out there. It's not boast. I mean, that's the power of God in me, but that's also the fruit of hard work.
Right.
And it's what you can have. It's what your listeners can have and can hope for. And I know that that's what everyone wants. And sometimes you need to hear that, because if you don't see what you can become and see the outcome, a lot of times you won't do the hard work. But if you can see, I'm going to get to that point that I heard Bo talk about, that's where I want to get. And then you're like, I have to do that. I have to go talk to that person or face that.
That's, why? It's because without a vision, you will not have the endurance to go through all the process. Yes. And I think it happens to you also. I remember when you tell me a story, when you go to some friend's house and you saw her parents or his parents just wash the dishes together, and you said like,
oh yeah, it was the first time. I was an atheist, and I saw, they were been married 30 some years, and it was before people had dishwashers. The dinosaurs also were. But I'm 18, and I walk in my girlfriend's house. I walk in to meet her parents, and they're at the kitchen sink washing dishes or looking at each other. He leans over and kisses her. I had never seen affection or love between my parents or any other. And that day, I like, whatever they have, that's what I want.
Because you get the picture.
I got the
now
picture.
You know what you want.
Like, that's what I want. And 4 months later, I discovered, they got Jesus. Jesus in their heart was what helped them love each other really well.
Mm.
So I wanted Jesus because that's what it took for them. And now that's what I have. So
That's
Very well. To close this, I want to ask you about the Be Great Ministry, your books, the Seven Summit. Can you talk about this?
yes, well, I've written 5 books, and I have a ministry called Be Great Ministries, and we'll provide some information
Yeah, just
later on.
check
Be
out.
Great is about the 3 great commandments. So Jesus said the greatest commandment of all is to love God with all your heart. So I condensed that down to worship. To be a good worshiper, learn how to worship well. Jesus said there's a second commandment that's just as important, and that's to love one another well. Well, and most people don't know how to love well. We're really poor at it. I mean, even Christians.
Of course.
The Christian rate of divorce is equal to those that are non-Christians. So that says, we're missing something.
Right.
So the book is written about those 2 greats, and then the third great is what we call the Great Commission. It's just simply telling other people the good news of Jesus. So, and then to do those, you need various other greats. You need the great book, you need great faith, and so on and so forth. So the book unpacks that. I have another book called The 7 Summits, Conquer or Be Conquered. And this is how when I mentor young men, I talk about, these 7 summits. And the concept is that on a hill or a high point, a summit or cumbre in Spanish, whoever in a battle, generals and sergeants and lieutenants, they're always trying to get the high point. Because if I can get the high point, I control the area. I can see where the enemy is. We can attack him. He can't figure out where we are. And so I discovered there's 7 key areas in life. And if you conquer them, you're going to have a great life. If you don't, you're going to get conquered by them. So number 1 is money. So I talk about money, and there's 2 ways you can be conquered by money. First, you can be in debt. And if you're in debt, you're conquered by money. The second way is to maybe make a lot of money, but you're greedy.
You're greedy, right?
Or you love money. You love what it can do for you. You're controlled by it. The second one is our passion. So anger, envy, our sexual passion. So, a lot of your podcast is about overcoming sexual passion. So I typically start with anger because I discover most young men, they got money problems. Most young men have anger problems. Summit 3 is about words. We can use our words in a good, healthy way or a destructive way. And most people, they do pretty good until a moment of anger or pain or emotional whatever. And then, boom, they're critical, they gossip, they do stuff, they yell, they cuss, towards the people that they love. Summit 4 is our relationship. You can have healthy, broken, or dysfunctional. Almost everybody has some broken and some dysfunction. A lot of people have those 2. Sometimes people also have healthy, but very few people have, generally only healthy relationships.
Yeah.
But if you have money problems, you're going to have anger problems. If you have anger problems, you're going to use your word wrong. When you use your word wrong, you're going to break relationship. You're going to be a mess. The 5th summit is the summit of God. We don't really conquer. We're conquered by God. That's quite different. It means you surrender. I put God at number 5 because if I started with number 1, I'd get Sunday school answers. But if I talk about money, passions, words, relationship,
People feel like more real, more like, okay.
Almost every one of these men go, I'm a mess, I need help. And then I go, Summit 5 is God. Like, I need God. I need an internal power. 6 is leadership. So you got to lead yourself. You need to follow a leader. You're going to have to lead your family. If you do nothing else but lead your family, you're a leader.
Yes.
And most people don't know anything about leadership. Or I shouldn't say most. There's a lot of people that don't. 7 is health. So in the United States, we have tremendous problem. 40% of people are obese. Another 30% are overweight. So we got 70% of our population. We're sedentary. We don't exercise. Our physical health is diminishing. Our lifespan is actually going down. And then there's this plague of mental health. And of course, what we're talking today contributes to that. When I say a plague of mental health, I don't mean to shame people if they have mental health. I'm just saying it's exploded. It didn't used to be there. We used to have just much fewer. And today it's rampant. And, you know, we got all kinds of issues. That would be a completely different podcast or 10 that we could talk about.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a summation of the 7 summits. So I help people. I tell a lot of my story, and I unpack that. So these books actually are in Spanish, and they're on Amazon. Not sure how Amazon works down here in Peru, but
It works.
yeah, we can find ways to get them.
But they can talk with your manager here, right?
With my manager?
Yes, your
Which is
Peruvian manager. Yes.
Yeah. You have some copies of these books.
I have some.
Yeah,
Yes.
so reach out to Lucho if you want a copy.
The yacht guy, the yacht. And the...
So you're going to have to look on Amazon to see, like, can I order this here? And because it's on Amazon ES or whatever it's called.
Yes, yeah.
Well, fellas, I think we're done here. Gracias, Bo, una vez más.
De nada.
Sí, entiendes muy bien español. Gracias, Luchito. Y nada, nos vemos la próxima semana. Otro capítulo más. Gracias.
Okay, Luchito.
Nos vemos. That's it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was fun. Now.